Sweden, 10th century. A grave on a windswept island. The people who dug it laid down a warrior. Not a farmer, not a merchant. A warrior. 2 horses by their side. Weapons laid across their body. Sword, axe, spear, arrows, and a shield. Now fast forward. The year is 1878. Archaeologists crack open that grave, and what do they see? Clearly, they say, a battle-hardened man. And they wrote it down as fact. For 128 years, that was the story. But then, DNA analysis drops like a fucking hammer in 2017. And the general, the rider, the commander in that grave was a woman, a Shield-Maiden. And history had to eat its own foot because the ghost of Birka was laughing through the dirt. Let me tell you something. History is never neutral. It's written by the people holding the pen. And those pens were almost always in the hands of dudes who couldn't wrap their heads around women leading armies. They saw 2 horses, a war axe, and a pile of weapons. And they said, has to be a man. And they said it with so much fucking confidence that it calcified into textbooks, lectures, and museum displays. Whole generations told the same lie. Until some scientists in the 21st century went, let's just test the bones. And suddenly, women with shields and spears, women at the front, turned from myth into evidence. Birka was prime fucking real estate. Founded around 750 AD, it sat on a strategic node in Lake Malaren. Picture 12 hectares of bustling trade, fortified earthworks, and boats coming from all over. The Abbasid Caliphate, Byzantium, 1,000 souls packed into Sweden's oldest town. And check this out. They started digging, and they found up to 2,000 graves spread across 3 burial grounds. I mean, think about that. You can map the whole society in bones. Farmers, merchants, priests, warriors. And then, our Shield-Maiden's grave, standing out like a lightning bolt. But of course, the 19th century mind couldn't handle the idea that the owner of that grave was a woman. Because Shield-Maidens were supposed to be tall tales around the fire. Saxo Grammaticus wrote about them. But academics waved it off. They said, oh no, that's just some fucking Norse fan fiction. Storytelling. Women didn't really fight. Except here's the thing. The dirt doesn't lie. DNA doesn't lie. And this woman, whoever she wasn't symbolic. She wasn't allegory. And she wasn't a myth. She was a fucking commander. She rode into combat with 2 horses. She held command over weapons that weren't ceremonial, but practical. And her people buried her with honor. And for 128 years, she was misgendered because the mind of modern man couldn't comprehend women in power. This is familiar as shit. How many times today do we have to rewrite the truth because it doesn't fit our biases? They ban books. Curriculum is changed. The statues of Confederate traitors still standing while people pretend that slavery wasn't the backbone of the South. Politicians are rewriting what happened on January 6th like we didn't all watch it on live fucking TV. History is political. It always has been. And the Birka Shield-Maiden, she's Exhibit A. Let's rewind the clock. It's the 9th century. and the Birka is buzzing. Think of it like a medieval Wall Street slammed together with a frontier fort. You got merchants haggling, fur traders bringing pelts from the north, and blacksmiths hammering away at new weapons and shields. Priests are whispering about Odin and Christ side by side. Yeah, Christianity's starting to creep in, but Odin's still king here. The town's got maybe 500 to 1,000 people, which doesn't sound like much today. But back then, that's a metropolis in Viking Sweden. And it's not just any town. Birka is Sweden's first urban hub, laid out on 12 hectares of fortified ground, defensive earthworks, watchtowers, the whole 9 yards. And surrounding it, burial mounds, 2,000 of them. A city of the dead, right next to the city of the living. Now, the sagas and tapestries always hinted at something people wanted to brush off. Women with weapons. Tapestries showing women in chainmail. Saxo Grammaticus, this medieval Danish historian, he wrote about shield maidens like it was gossip. He said they put on armor, took up weapons, and fought beside men. And for centuries, the scholars, they said, that's just storytelling, campfire myth. But here's the question. Where do myths come from? You don't just invent an entire archetype of women without some real-world implications. If shield maidens were pure fiction, why did their image persist in brooches, poems, and sagas? Why did men tell stories about them if they were just fantasy? The answer is simple. They were there. Maybe not every day, maybe not the majority, but enough to shape the memory, enough to terrify enemies, enough to be written into history by a guy who didn't even want to admit that it was real. What's wild to me is that it was so impossible for 19th and 20th century scholars to grasp. They decided that the woman in the grave had to be symbolic, or that her weapons were ceremonial, or that the bones must have been mixed with someone else's. They weren't. The DNA says otherwise. Every test confirms it. The Shield-Maiden of Birka was a woman. Acknowledging her forces us to rethink Viking society. It forces a crack in the narrative where men fight and women weave. Suddenly, the past looks more complicated, and complexity makes people sweat. In the sagas, Valkyries rode through the sky, finding warriors for Odin's hall. They weren't passive. They chose who lived and who died. Also who feasted in Valhalla. Imagine living in a world where those myths blurred into reality. A woman, like our Birka warrior, could ride into battle and look exactly like the Valkyries people dreamed of. Flesh and blood blending with legend until no one could tell where myth stopped and history began. That's the thing about the Shield-Maiden. She wasn't just a warrior. She was an archetype. Living proof. The sagas weren't lies, but memory written in poetry. And I know, some people listening are gonna say, but Cullen, come on. She's just one example, one grave. And that doesn't prove that women were warriors. But I know you've heard of the Amazons, motherfucker. It doesn't prove all Viking women fought. But you know what it does prove? That they could. That society wasn't as rigid as we were told. That if you had the skill, the rank, the will, you could command men and horses. And the only reason people choke on that fact today is because they want to validate their own narrow-minded bullshit. When the archaeologists opened up the grave in the 1870s, they cataloged what they saw. Weapons, animals, pieces for a game. But they filtered it all through their own assumptions. They said, a man, a commander. And for over a century, that assumption hardened into fact. 2 horses buried beside the body. Think about that. In the Viking Age, a horse was wealth, power, status. To be buried with 1 was an honor. To be buried with 2, that screamed command. Then the weapons, not trinkets. A sword, sharp and deadly. An axe, practical and brutal. A spear, and a quiver of arrows. A shield. Each one used, not decorative. This wasn't some ceremonial burial. This was the toolkit of someone who lived by battle. This wasn't some isolated backwater. This was a hub in a global network. Dirhams from Baghdad have been found there. Silks from Byzantium. Glass beads that came from as far as the Middle East. Vikings weren't just raiding monasteries in England. They were plugged into the economy of the day. And if Birka was that connected, what does it mean that a woman could rise high enough to command there? It means societies are never as simple as we are told. While men scribbled sagas about berserkers, women like her were actually leading. And when she died, her people didn't hide it. They honored it. They buried her with everything she needed for the next life. It was the later historians who buried her twice, once in the ground and once in the narrative. And doesn't that sound fucking familiar? How many stories today get rewritten to fit someone's fragile worldview? How many women, people of color, queer folks, revolutionaries get erased from the textbooks? Because they don't fit the neat little gendered, sanitized, and whitewashed fairy tale version of history. The Shield-Maiden's grave is like a giant middle fucking finger sticking up out of the Swedish soil. A reminder that the past was messy, complex, full of voices that refuse to stay in their lane. And you know what? That's why people still fight about her. Because she breaks the script. And when you break the script, the whole story changes. And here's where the modern pop culture swings in. You've seen Vikings, right? Lagertha with her braid and her shield, standing shoulder to shoulder with Ragnar. You've maybe played Assassin's Creed Valhalla, letting you play as a female Viking commander, like it's no big deal. You've seen Marvel retool Valkyrie into a literal powerhouse. Pop culture gets it. Entertainment can sometimes go further than academia ever dares. And yet, every time a badass female warrior shows up on a screen, some corner of the internet loses its fucking mind. That's fucking woke propaganda. Historically inaccurate. Nah, buddy. It's historically inconvenient for you. The dirt in Birka says otherwise. You think the Vikings gave a damn about your fragile masculinity? You think warriors staring death in the face cared whether their commander had a beard? Fuck no. They cared if you could win. If you could keep them alive. If you could lead them into hell and drag them back out again. And here's what's wild. History is a battlefield. Same as any shield wall. Every generation rewrites it. Every culture censors it. Saxo tried to paint the Shield-Maidens as freaks. 19th century scholars erased them entirely. Today's trolls scream fake news when confronted with DNA evidence. It's all the same war. Who controls the story controls the past. And who controls the past controls the present. Orwell said it best, but the Shield-Maiden's grave is living proof. You see book bans right now. Same energy. You see politicians rewriting the Capitol riot like it was a guided tour gone wrong. Same energy. You see people scrubbing the internet. You see people frothing because their kids are learning that women, queer folks, and people of color existed in history. Same energy. The Birka Shield-Maiden is more than bones in the ground. She's a reminder that every time someone tells you that never happened, what that really means is, I don't want that to be true. And that, my friends, is the real battle. Not just axes and shields, but memory itself. And here we are. We've walked through Birka. We've dug through her grave. We've listened to the whispers of sagas and the roar of battle. And still the question lingers. Who was she? What was her name? What did she see when she opened her eyes that last morning? The dirt can't give us her name. The sagas don't record it. But the weapons, the horses, the gaming chess pieces, they scream it louder than any ink. She was a commander, a strategist, a warrior, a shield maiden. And I can't help but wonder, if she could speak, what would she say? And here's where it might hit home for you, the listener. Maybe you spit in a tube for Ancestry DNA or 23andMe. Maybe you scrolled through your percentages. 12% Irish, 6% West African, 31% Scandinavian, whatever the mix is. Well, guess what? That Birka Shield-Maiden, her genome is in the databases. That means you can check if your DNA links back to her. Go to mytrueancestry.com, plug it in. You might be closer to her than you think. This is not a paid advertisement or any of that shit. I just thought it was cool. Imagine that, though. You're sitting on your couch, doom scrolling on your phone, and somewhere in your bloodline is a woman who commanded troops 1,000 years ago. She was buried with 2 horses, a whole bunch of shit, and she got erased by centuries of historians and then resurrected by DNA. That's not just history. That's fucking family. History is not dead. It's not static. It's alive and fights back. You can erase people from the page, but you can't erase them from the ground. You can deny the Shield-Maiden, but the DNA will drag you kicking and screaming to the truth. And yet the war for memory never ends. Every day someone tries to rewrite what happened. Every day someone censors, bans, silences. And every day the bones wait. The graves wait. The artifacts wait. The Birka Shield-Maiden is proof that the truth claws its way out, no matter how long it takes. 1,000 years, 1,200 years, 3,000 years. Doesn't matter. She broke through. And if she could, so can every other buried truth. The massacres we don't teach, the voices we silence, the heroes we pretend didn't exist. They are all still there, screaming under the dirt, just waiting for us to dig them up. So what do we do with that? We remember. We tell the story the way it was, not the way it is, so that it doesn't offend people. We drag the erased back into the light. Because the real lesson of the Birka Shield-Maiden isn't just that women fought. It's that history isn't necessarily the truth. And it's our job to rip those lies apart. So next time someone tells you that never happened, think of her. Think of the Shield-Maiden buried with her horses, her sword, her strategy tokens, her dignity. Think of how they wrote her out and how she refused to stay gone. This has been the Time Machine Diaries. I'm Cullen. And if there's one thing you can take away from this, let it be this. History is never finished. It's waiting for us to fight for it. And maybe, just maybe, when we fight for the truth, we're fighting beside her. See you in the next one.